Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's see the top stories. Russian attacks on Ukraine kills 3 people and wounds dozens, including children. The leaders of Thailand and Cambodia signed an enhanced ceasefire deal in the presence of U.S. President Donald Trump. And suspects arrested over the theft of crown jewels from Paris' Louvre Museum. Russia launched a large-scale drone attack on Kiev overnight on Sunday, killing at least 3 people and injuring 31 others, including 6 children, according to Ukraine's State Emergency Service. City officials said residential buildings were hit, where fires broke out in a 9-story and a 16-story apartment block. The assault followed earlier strikes on Ukraine on Saturday that killed 4 people and wounded dozens more. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia has fired around 770 ballistic missiles and over 50 Kinzhal hypersonic missiles at Ukraine since the beginning of 2025. Russia says it has successfully tested its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile, a weapon President Vladimir Putin claims can pierce any defense shield. The announcement, made as Putin met military commanders in camouflage fatigues, marks what he called crucial testing of a missile that once seemed impossible to build. According to Russia's top general Valery Gerasimov, the Burevestnik, also known to NATO as Skyfall, flew for 15 hours and covered 14,000 kilometers during its October 21st test. The test follows last week's nuclear drills and sends a clear signal to Washington as President Donald Trump increases pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine and threatens new sanctions. U.S. President Donald Trump said that he doesn't plan to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin until he thinks a deal is in place to secure peace between Russia and Ukraine, while answering questions of reporters.
I'm going to have to know that we're going to make a deal. I'm not going to be wasting my time. I've always had a great relationship with Vladimir Putin, but this has been very disappointing. I thought this would have gone long before peace in the Middle East.
Over on Middle East, hundreds gathered in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square on Saturday, urging the Israeli government to finalize the hostage deal and secure the return of the remaining bodies held in Gaza. Protesters held banners and photos of deceased hostages, demanding renewed action nearly 2 weeks into the U.S.-mediated ceasefire. President Donald Trump has given Hamas a 48-hour ultimatum to return the bodies of deceased hostages, including 2 Americans, warning that failure to comply could jeopardize future negotiations. Israel officials say the number of bodies still held in Gaza could fall to single digits within weeks, as Egypt sends recovery teams to assist. Tensions ease along the Thailand-Cambodian border as both countries sign a new ceasefire agreement with presence of President Donald Trump after their deadliest clashes in decades. Leaders from both sides say the deal marks a step toward lasting peace, with international observers set to monitor its implementation.
Thailand and Cambodia have signed a new ceasefire agreement to end recent border dispute. The signing took place on Sunday during the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur with presence of US President Donald Trump. The accord builds on a truce reached in July following 5 days of heavy clashes that left at least 48 people dead and forced around 300,000 people to flee their homes. When the 2 countries halted clashes in July, that ceasefire came shortly after Trump warned that continued hostilities could affect their trade negotiations with the United States.
So now these gentlemen are about to sign what we're calling the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords. Good name. Both countries are agreeing to cease all hostilities and work to build good neighborly relationships, which have already started. 18 Cambodian prisoners of war will be released, and under this agreement, observers from ASEAN countries, including Malaysia, will be deployed to make sure that the peace prevails and endures. I have no doubt that it will.
Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet said both sides were already preparing to withdraw heavy weapons as part of the deal.
As we speak, I think our two commanders are discussing on the possibility of start of withdrawal, partial withdrawal of the first phase of our heavy weapons as an indication of our willingness to show that the execution of the joint declarations. At the same time, I strongly hope for the prompt release of our 18 soldiers on humanitarian grounds.
Thai Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul called the signing a reflection of both nations' commitment to peace and respect for sovereignty.
Thailand stands for peace. This declaration reflects our will to resolve differences peacefully, in full respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity. This declaration, if fully implemented, will provide the building blocks for a lasting peace.
People in both Cambodia and Thailand welcomed the peace deal, but remain unsure if it will last.
As a Cambodian, I truly want peace. I support today's signing of the peace agreement and hope that we can all be safe, with no more fighting from this day forward.
To be able to trust them for anything, I think it must come in the form of written documents, not just spoken promises. A formally signed agreement would make it more credible. Having the United States as a witness would help ensure transparency and proper verification.
The five-day war in July was the worst fighting between the two countries in decades. It followed a border skirmish in May that killed a Cambodian soldier and reignited long-standing tensions. The conflict dates back to 1907, when French colonial authorities drew a map placing the Pravi R temple inside Cambodian territory. Cambodia regards this map as legally binding, but Thailand disputes it, saying the treaty was signed under pressure. The International Court of Justice ruled in 1962 that the temple belonged to Cambodia, but parts of the surrounding land remain contested. Tensions rose again in 2008 after Cambodia listed the temple as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, sparking protests and sporadic clashes. Officials now hope the new ceasefire will end the decades-old dispute and prevent further violence along the border.
Gathered in Kuala Lumpur for the 47th ASEAN Summit are leaders from Southeast Asia and major partner nations, including the United States, China and Japan. Against a backdrop of rising regional tensions, the summit is tackling trade, economic partnerships and security challenges, while marking key milestones and new developments in regional trade agreements.
Leaders from across Southeast Asia and partner nations have gathered in Kuala Lumpur, including the United States and China, for the 47th ASEAN Summit at a critical time of rising regional tensions and shifting global alliances. Top on the agenda, trade and regional economic partnerships, the South China Sea disputes, Myanmar's political crisis, and efforts to strengthen economic integration amid global uncertainty. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim opened the summit by calling the Thailand-Cambodia ceasefire an act of courage and reaffirmed ASEAN's commitment to peace in Myanmar. Amid diplomatic milestones, ASEAN formally welcomed East Timor, or Timor-Leste, as its 11th member. The historic accession, marked by the raising of the country's flag, fulfills a vision set nearly half a century ago. Malaysia also announced plans to host the 5th summit of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the world's largest trade bloc, on Monday. Prime Minister Anwar highlighted recent trade advances.
Now we have upgraded ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement ATIGA, and it is certainly a decisive step forward. The signing of ASEAN-China Free Trade Area 3.0 on 28 October will mark a new chapter in our partnership. Beyond ASEAN Plus One framework, we are accelerating the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the world's largest free trade pact. We will host the 5th RCEP Leaders Summit tomorrow to give a new momentum to this implementation.
US President Donald Trump attending the summit for the first stop of his Asia trip, held a bilateral meeting with Anwar. The two countries reached agreements on reciprocal trade and critical minerals. Trump also told Southeast Asian leaders that his country would be a strong partner for the region for many generations.
Message to the nations of Southeast Asia is that the United States is with you 100%, and we intend to be a strong partner and friend for many generations to come. 1 year ago, we were in a different position, but now we're in the best position we've ever been. And I really do. I say it's the golden age of America, the golden age of the United States. Together we'll create incredible prosperity for the nations on both sides of the Pacific Ocean and to seize new opportunities for all of our people.
Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi said Japan consistently supports the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and called for closer cooperation between Tokyo and the regional bloc at the summit. As the summit continues, ASEAN leaders are pressing for trade multilateralism, deeper ties with new partners, and renewed regional stability, navigating between the US's assertive trade policy and China's growing influence across Southeast Asia.
China and the United States have reached a preliminary consensus on key trade issues, including extending their trade truce, fentanyl control, and export regulations. The announcement comes after 2 days of talks in Kuala Lumpur between Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top negotiator Li Chenggang, and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer held on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Li did not provide further details on the agreed terms. U.S. President Donald Trump said he's confident of reaching a deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping, whom he is expected to meet next week. While the White House has confirmed the meeting, Beijing has yet to issue an official statement. U.S. President Donald Trump said he could work out some deals during his meeting with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Malaysia. Trump expressed optimism, saying the United States could strike pretty good deals for both countries. Lula said he's confident relations can move forward, adding there is no reason for any conflict between Brazil and the United States. The meeting comes after Trump raised tariffs on most Brazilian imports from 10 to 50% in August, linking it to what he called a witch hunt against former President Jair Bolsonaro. Lula called the hike a mistake, pointing to a $410 billion trade surplus with Brazil over 15 years. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Saturday that he's increasing tariffs on Canada by an additional 10% just days after ending trade talks with Ottawa. Trump's move came after a Canadian advertisement featuring late President Ronald Reagan, which he called misleading, aired during the World Series. On his Truth Social post, Trump said the ad was a fraud and a hostile act, prompting the higher tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Friday that Canada is ready to resume trade talks with the United States. Officials from the White House, the U.S. Commerce Department, and Carney's office have not immediately commented. Authorities and residents across Jamaica are racing to prepare as Hurricane Melissa strengthens, with forecasters warning of record-breaking winds, torrential rains, and deadly flooding.
Hurricane Melissa is barreling toward Jamaica and could become the strongest storm the island has ever faced, prompting urgent preparations as catastrophic flooding and landslides loom. In Kingston, residents and workers were seen filling sandbags, stocking supplies and reinforcing rooftops as strong winds swept coastal areas.
As you can see, we're here at bag some sand, because this is what we do, bag sand, prepare for the customer. Some people, when them come, them buy, block off them doorway, them gateway. Some buy for put on them house top, keep down the zinc from lifting, so it's all good here, you know.
While locals work to secure their homes, tourists are also feeling the storm's impact, facing disrupted travel plans and multiple flight changes.
So we were on vacation for like 4 days, and we decided to wait it out and not cut the vacation because we just hoped the weather would change. It didn't change, and they switched our flight 4 times, and so now we're just hoping that they don't switch the flight again.
The U.S. National Hurricane Center said Hurricane Melissa had strengthened into a major Category 4 storm, with the potential to reach Category 5 by Sunday night, and is likely to hit Jamaica's southern coast Tuesday morning. Prime Minister Andrew Holness urged residents to take the threat seriously. A hurricane warning is in effect for Jamaica, with watches issued for southern Haiti and parts of eastern Cuba. Meteorologists warn the slow-moving storm could dump up to 80 centimetres of rain, triggering life-threatening floods and landslides across the region.
Anger and grief filled the streets of Valencia as thousands demanded justice 1 year after Spain's deadliest floods in decades. Protesters accused the regional authorities of negligence and called for the resignation of Valencia's leader, Carlos Mazón.
Tens of thousands of people filled the streets of Valencia on Saturday, marking 1 year since devastating floods killed 229 people across eastern Spain. Led by tractors and banners reading Mazón resignation and they didn't die, they were murdered. Protesters demanded the resignation of regional leader Carlos Mazón, accusing his government of a slow and negligent response to the tragedy.
I have lost 3 people and they were all very young. So now all I ask is that justice be done, that justice be served, and that whoever has to pay for it, pays for it.
We want Mazón and his entire government to resign for failing to take responsibility for a full-blown massacre. He did not respond when he was needed, and he is a person who has, and we demand, responsibility, even imprisonment.
The October 2024 floods, caused by a violent weather system known as Dana, submerged homes, cars and streets across 78 municipalities. Authorities have faced heavy criticism for sending flood alerts more than 12 hours after the National Weather Agency had issued its highest level warning. A judicial investigation into the regional government's handling of the emergency is still underway. Mazón, a member of Spain's Conservative Popular Party, maintains that his administration lacked the necessary information to issue an earlier alert. The disaster remains Europe's deadliest flood-related tragedy since 1967.
A breakthrough in one of the world's most daring museum heists. The French prosecutors say suspects have been arrested over the theft of crown jewels from Paris' Louvre Museum. The jewels, worth more than 80 million euros, were stolen in a lightning-fast raid last week that stunned the world and raised new questions about security at the iconic site.
Suspects in the daring theft of crown jewels from Paris's Louvre have been arrested, prosecutors said Sunday, a week after the audacious heist shocked the world. According to local reports, 2 men in their 30s from the Seine-Saint-Denis suburb of Paris were detained on Saturday evening. Both were already known to police, and one of them was reportedly preparing to leave for Algeria when arrested at Roissy Airport. Authorities did not confirm the total number of arrests or give further details, warning that any leaks could jeopardize the ongoing investigation. The robbery took place on Sunday of last week, when thieves used a basket lift to scale the Louvre's facade, smashed a window, and forced open display cases in the Apollo Gallery. The theft took less than 8 minutes, highlighting the boldness and precision of the operation. Consequently, the Louvre moved part of its jewellery collection to the Bank of France vaults on Friday as a precaution, according to local media. They made off with 8 priceless objects valued at 88 million euros, $102 million, including a sapphire diadem, a necklace, and a single earring linked to 19th century queens Marie-Amélie and Hortense. One item, Eugenie's emerald-set imperial crown, with more than 1,300 diamonds, was later found outside the museum, damaged but restorable. The Louvre, which had reopened earlier this week, called the incident a terrible failure, raising fresh questions about security at the world's most visited museum. The window the thieves used to rob the Louvre last week has become Paris's newest must-see attraction. Visitors have been flocking to the site to see the escape route for themselves.
Here is the latest on nuclear energy in Europe. In Germany, 2 cooling towers in Groningen were brought down, marking another step in the country's shift from nuclear power to renewables. The event was a spectacle at the historic landmark, drawing locals who were moved to see a familiar part of their town disappear.
Germany demolishes Gundremmingen cooling towers as nuclear phase-out continues. 2 huge cooling towers that had dominated the skyline since 1980 were demolished at midday on Saturday in the Bavarian town of Gundremmingen, marking another step in Germany's nuclear phase-out as part of its shift from nuclear power to renewable energy. Germany's last 3 nuclear plants went offline in 2023. The country has been gradually moving away from nuclear energy since 2011, following the Fukushima disaster in Japan, where a powerful earthquake and tsunami caused a nuclear meltdown and widespread radiation fears. The demolition drew a large crowd, with tens of thousands of people gathering to witness the towers fall. For many locals, the event was nostalgic and emotional.
It's very emotional for me, I have to be honest. And I only saw the first tower. I didn't see the second one at all. I just saw the big cloud. But it's still very emotional for me. It's a great landmark, and now it's history.
The towers had been a familiar landmark for decades, and seeing them disappear felt like losing a piece of home.
This is not necessarily about nuclear power plants, but rather about the cooling towers. And it has nothing to do with being for or against nuclear power. It has nothing to do with that at all. I spoke with some opponents of nuclear power today, and I spoke with supporters of nuclear power. The mood is similar everywhere. A piece of home is being lost, and that is the situation.
The demolition has sparked fresh debate over Germany's energy policy. Rising energy prices after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine have led some politicians to question Germany's decision to phase out nuclear power, while pro-nuclear groups and some Bavarian conservatives have gone further, calling for a full rethink of the policy. Elsewhere in Europe, nuclear plants in France and Switzerland have had to reduce output or shut down temporarily due to extreme heat waves, which make river water too warm to safely cool reactors and could harm local ecosystems. For residents of Gundremmingen, however, the tower's collapse was above all a symbolic farewell, a moment to reflect on the plant's long presence in their community.
At least 2 workers were killed and 5 others seriously injured in a fire at Iraq's Zubair oil field on Sunday, according to officials. The blaze erupted during welding operations near a pipeline section that carries crude oil to nearby storage tanks. Firefighters are working to extinguish the fire, which originated from a gas leak in an old pumping system at the Zubair storage depot, the oil ministry said. Oilfield officials said production has not been affected, with throughput continuing at 400,000 barrels per day. But they stressed the fire must be contained quickly to avoid potential shutdowns of some loading operations. Tensions ease in Turkey's decades-long conflict with Kurdish militants as the PKK takes a major step toward disarmament. The group's withdrawal marks a new phase in efforts to end one of the country's longest-running insurgencies.
The Kurdistan Workers' Party said on Sunday the move is part of a disarmament process coordinated with the government. The group urged Ankara to take steps allowing it to enter politics legally. The PKK has waged an insurgency against the Turkish state since 1984. It decided in May to disarm after a call from its jailed leader, Abdullah Öcalan. The conflict has killed more than 40,000 people. In a statement from its base in Iraq's Qandil Mountains, the PKK said the withdrawal aims to build a free, democratic and brotherly life. It asked the government to pass laws that would allow its political integration. Ömer Çelik, spokesperson for Turkish president, said the move supports the goal of a terror-free Turkey. He added that it will help guide a parliamentary commission working on the legal side of the process. The PKK is mainly based in northern Iraq, where Turkey continues to strike its positions. The group now seeks more rights and limited autonomy for Kurds instead of full independence.
Azerbaijan's servicemen are taking part in the Nusret 2025 invitation exercise, an international naval drill hosted by Turkey in the Gulf of Saros, the Ministry of Defense said. The exercise involves naval and air forces from NATO and Turkey, units from the Coast Guard Command, and observers from multiple countries. Its aim is to improve the planning, execution, and assessment of mine warfare operations while enhancing cooperation and interoperability among participating forces. Alongside Azerbaijan, 44 countries are taking part. Kazakhstan is leading Central Asia in attracting foreign investment. The latest UN data shows that the country remains ahead of its regional peers, drawing billions of dollars in new projects despite global economic uncertainty. Fariza Kalimurzuna reports from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is reinforcing its position as one of the most attractive investment destinations in Central Asia, despite the ongoing turbulence in the global economy. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the country became a regional leader in major greenfield projects in 2024. Out of 5 global initiatives worth more than $1 billion each launched in landlocked nations, 4 were implemented in Kazakhstan. The total volume of foreign direct investment reached $17.2 billion last year. Economists say these figures reflect the resilience of the national economy and the growing confidence of international partners in Kazakhstan's long-term potential. Over the past year, 45 new investment projects have been launched across the country, creating more than 6,000 jobs. The largest share of foreign capital went into mining, manufacturing and trade, but there is also growing interest in renewable energy, food production, business services and research and development. Russia remains the top investor with $4.1 billion, followed by the South Korea and China. These countries are developing large-scale industrial and infrastructure projects, from gas processing plants and logistics hubs to production of rare earth metals. Experts note that Kazakhstan's strategic location at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, as well as its improving business climate, continue to attract new investors. The government has also focused on diversifying the economy and creating a more transparent regulatory environment to support sustainable growth. Fariza Kalimurzuna, Almaty, A News.
To Turkey now, where in Muğla, the sea is a little livelier than usual. The adult turtles and 5 tiny hatchlings took their first swim back into the wild after a month of care in a heartwarming ceremony that brought smiles to locals and visitors alike.
Meet Umay, Irem, Dylan and Bumen. And no, these aren't the names of humans. They belong to a group of tiny, brave sea turtles ready for their next big adventure. After months of care and rehabilitation, these sea turtles are finally returning home. In Muğla, 10 adult turtles and 5 little hatchlings were released into the sea in a touching ceremony that delighted both locals and tourists. These turtles made a journey of hope. Professor Dr. Jakub Kaska, director of the Sea Turtle Research, Rescue, Rehabilitation and Information Center, said returning injured turtles to the beaches where they were born is a deeply rewarding experience. He added that this year, 4 green turtles, 6 caretta caretta and 5 hatchlings were sent back to the sea. Ömer Bolat, Provincial Director of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change, noted that around 40,000 hatchlings emerged from 800 nests this year, and that the area continues to be carefully protected. As the rehabilitated turtles were set free, locals and tourists watched with delight as tiny flippers paddled into the waves, beginning a new chapter of life in their natural home.
Thank you for joining me, and that's your news update for now. Make sure you stay tuned to A News.